Welcome to the Drexel interview. I'm Paula Morantz-Cohen, host of the show and a professor of English at Drexel University. Our guest today is the Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright Charles Fuller. Mr. Fuller received 2 Obie Awards for his 1980 play Zooman and the Sign, and a Pulitzer Prize for his 1981 A Soldier's Play, which he later adapted for the movies as A Soldier's Story, starring Denzel Washington and Adolph Caesar. The movie was nominated for 3 Academy Awards, including 1 for Best Screenplay. Mr. Fuller has gone on to write extensively for theater, movies, and television. He is currently participating in the 20th Annual Celebration of Black Writing, underway in Philadelphia until February 20th. Charles Fuller, welcome to the Drexel interview.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Fuller, you grew up in Philadelphia,
Yes.
and you spent your early career here.
Yes.
And I wonder what the major influences were that helped shape you as a writer.
I grew up in North Philadelphia, and a lot of what I saw and what I learned in the project where we grew up, as well as the neighborhood in which we moved into after the project, are subjects of much of my work, really.
They've informed your work from then on.
Yes, really. Yes, it did. And I was always told to write what you know.
Yeah.
So as a consequence, you're supposed to write about the people you met and the people you've been around, and so it was easy for me to do that because I knew so many folks that lived in my neighborhood.
Who had dramatic stories?
Yeah, a lot of them. Just life, really, because most of the things I write come out of that, really, and history. So when I'm not writing history, I'm writing about the life of the people I grew up with and my own contemporaries, really.
Okay. And yet you say, or you've told people that there was quite a bit of resistance to your being a writer growing up. Do you think that added to the impetus in some way, or was part of the tension of your becoming a writer?
When I was growing up, which was a long, long time ago.
You say that, but it can't be that long ago.
The idea that a young African-American man would decide to be a writer and take on a job that had no guarantee of a weekly income, no civil service position or medical benefits or retirement income, was a very challenging sort of thing to do. Most people, if you had a college education, you were supposed to go into being a lawyer, a teacher, a doctor, and that sort of thing. To take on the risks of a life that did not guarantee your income was really something that very few people did, or even took chances on, really. So, in terms of getting support, my parents still found it difficult after a while to say, "Oh, you're a writer," because you had to have a job. You couldn't depend on writing.
So they were frightened by the notion.
Yes, yeah, most people were.
You had an inner core of self-confidence, I assume, that believed that you would prevail?
Yeah, I believed in myself completely. But I was always taught that if you studied long enough and worked hard enough, you could accomplish just about anything that you set out to do.
Are those values that your parents taught you?
Yes, absolutely. My father and mother taught me.
So even though they were against the writing career, essentially they gave you that
Oh,
belief.
yeah, absolutely. Don't give up. Keep working at what you set out to do. So, as a writer, I did exactly that, quite frankly.
You've also spoken about how important reading was, how much it informed your writing, and that came very early.
I enjoyed reading. Our mother used to read us stories when we were kids. And the whole idea of reading and imagining was a great part of growing up when I was a kid. I grew up in the area of radio, so you had to imagine everything. And it was delightful to be able to do that. So as I grew to be a writer, the business of reading novels and reading stories always provided me with a set of images that I could always see the story in my head as I read it. So it was
you consider yourself a very visual writer. I know that playwriting, I guess, is where you made your name, although now you say you've moved into novel writing.
Yes.
And then screenwriting also.
Yes.
It's interesting, though, that you say radio is very important, and now you're writing for movies.
Radio provides you with a way to imagine that television simply cannot do. Everything is available for you when you watch a television screen. You don't have to think about anything. All the images are there, the characters are there. You hear the voice of the villain, and it's mean and nasty. And so you don't have to imagine what that person looks like, because it's all there for you. I think growing up at a time when you had to listen to the radio and figure out what this character looked like, what this woman was like, what this man was, gave you the ability to see in your mind a great deal that now kids don't have an opportunity to really see.
You feel there's a kind of an imaginative impoverishment that has
set
in as a result of television?
I don't find young people very adventurous at all. Most of them, if you ask them how to get from their house to downtown Philadelphia, a sizable number of them would not know how to do that.
And
they never leave their neighborhoods.
Do you blame
they just
television
go to school.
for this? And you write for television, am I correct
I
there?
do. I write. I don't. Television by itself is not the reason for this. I think as we progress, technology produces more things that keep us outside of human contact and outside of motion and moving and seeing things and doing things than it used to. For example, if you wanted to go to the Rodin Museum, for example, my friends and I used to ride bikes from our neighborhood to the Rodin Museum on the Parkway. If you needed a place to sit quietly, that was a place we knew where we could go. We'd ride our bikes there. Nowadays, you can get a DVD, a disc, excuse me, with all the art in the Rodin on it, and you can sit and look at the art in your living room, okay? Right. You don't have to leave the house. You don't have to go to the parkway. You don't have to do any of those things. You can see all of that on your TV screen or your computer. So I'm not so sure that having access to images is as successful as having access to the reality in those images. I think going down to the art museum, going to these different places allows you to understand more about what they are than seeing them on a DVD or on television.
That's very interesting way of putting it. Let's talk a little bit about your play, A Soldier's Play, which won you a Pulitzer Prize and must have changed your life in appreciable ways, or did it?
To a certain extent it did, yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about, first of all, what motivated you to write that play, which is such a powerful one? I've seen the movie, the screenplay. Tell us a little bit about it, and also how writing it and getting the award, and then, of course, writing the screenplay and the Academy Award nomination changed your life.
Well, I had planned to write a play. I had planned to write a soldier's play for some time. I'd been reading in Second World War material about African-American troops who had fought in the Second World War. And I had planned to write a play about it. And I was reading a great deal of material. And there's a point at which you have to stop reading and sit down and do the work. And I had decided that it would be a foil, in a sense, to a work called Billy Budd, written by Herman Melville. So the story just began to come to me, really. In addition to that, also, I was broke, to be honest about it.
So you needed some money.
Oh, yeah. I had a family. And so it was very important to write something that was going to pay, really. Yeah. The last play I'd written for the Negro Ensemble Company was Zooman and the Sign. It was successful, but
It had won you an Obie Award.
Yeah, it won me an Obie Award, but plays don't run forever.
Right.
And I needed to do something that was going to generate some more cash so I could take care of my family.
Was your sense in writing this play that this was going to be a play that would make you some money?
Not at first. When I sat down to write the play, I wanted to do something that would mirror Billy Budd and at the same time do what I wanted to do, which was talk about African Americans in the Second World War and the kinds of lifestyle that they had when they were, you know, in the barracks and in the camps where they had to train. And so it became all that as a consequence of really enjoying those characters, really. I found a great deal of joy in writing those characters. I knew most of those guys, excuse me.
They each had a great deal of depth to them.
Yeah.
The character of CJ, I take it, is the character, the Billy Budd character.
Yes.
I wonder if you could you briefly explain the parallel for those that don't know the story? I mean, I guess it's certainly not a one-on-one sort of correspondence.
Well, CJ is the parallel character to Billy Budd, the Christ-like figure in the play.
Yeah.
He's CJ, which is the reverse of JC. The sergeant is I'm trying to remember the sergeant at arms on the boat. I'm trying to remember his name.
I can't remember his name either, and I'm an English professor. So.
And the captain is essentially the captain. What I did was take the story and really, in a sense, make it objective so someone could come and investigate this murder, this death that had occurred. And I realized that it would be a good way to introduce the audience to all the things that I was thinking about regarding the Second World War and our participation in it, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And so.
And yet it also has contemporary resonance as well.
Oh, yes, it should. Hopefully it has.
All the characters are in a way sympathetic, even the character played by Adolf Caesar, the sergeant. And I guess that was your intention?
Yes. I don't, nobody is completely evil. I find that just ludicrous. And for people to think that there are things called villains, to me, is stretching credulity. There are no such thing as villains. There are human beings who decide they're going to steal your pocketbook. It doesn't mean that they're this stereotypical evil person that comes out of the wall or something that sort of drops down from the ceiling, who has vampire teeth. You know what I mean? The person that's most evil, so-called evil people are pathetic for the most part.
I'm just going to reintroduce you for a moment. Our guest today on the Drexel interview is Charles Fuller, Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright and Academy Award-nominated screenwriter. So we were talking about A Soldier's Story and the complexity, really, of it. And I guess all your plays have had, all your writing, I think, has a certain level of character complexity where it's impossible to say that someone's a villain and someone is necessarily a hero.
Yes, I mean, no one, I've never met anyone that was a stereotype. I never in my life met anybody that fit any stereotype that I've ever seen. So to reduce people to the level of stereotype, I've always thought was criminal because it says nothing about their humanity. And for me, what was most important was to talk about the humanity of these people, regardless of whether you like them or dislike them. Those are minor things in my head. But what are they as human beings? That part of the problem with our understanding of this country and our place in it, African Americans' place in it, is that it's very easy to characterize people in terms of stereotypes. And so you